Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
Hey y'all, it's a Mountain Murders heat wave.
We struggling out here.
It's too hot.
I'm too hot, Heather.
And I'm a sweaty Dylan.
You're a damp Dylan.
Yeah. Yes, I'm Mr. Moist.
Probably. I believe that. Yeah, I've got a lot of underboob sweat in places I forget that can sweat.
I got some underboob sweat as well.
Man, it is a rough one this week.
Yeah, so if you are in the grips of this large heat wave here in the United States of Americas, stay safe and hydrated.
Yeah, well, you should probably stay safe anyway since we're like dropping bombs on Iran and shit.
Gosh, I know. I can't.
None of us really know what's happening in the world.
No, so here we are with our escape to the true crime world for a little bit of fun news.
Yeah, we won't drop too many bombs on you on this podcast.
We
Maybe
won't.
we will. Who knows?
No, we won't.
We're unpredictable. Dylan, let's get started. I thought first we could discuss the Gilgo Beach Killer, House of Secrets, which is streaming on Peacock, where the suspected Long Island serial killer's family speaks out for the first time.
Now, I gotta say, this is one of those docs where you're like, oh, this case was very popular for, many years.
We probably know as much about it as we can.
Yeah, there's not going, you might have a interesting interview or something, but for the most part, you're not going to learn anything. And I have to say that was not the case with this doc.
No, I felt like there was some information we had not previously heard about.
Bombshells.
And honestly, I had a suggestion in kind of the beginning of the episode, like, well, if they had just done this, they could have found the killer. And it took them years to just do this one simple thing.
Which led them almost directly to the killer.
And we're going to get to that because, I like being right. So the opening shot is May 1st of 2010, Oak Beach, Long Island, New York. We see kind of this scene on the beach, and then we hear a 911 call from Shannon Gilbert. The 3-part docuseries, The Gilgo Beach Killer, House of Secrets, starts with Shannon's disappearance and how the search for her by Suffolk County Police led to the discovery of the remains of 4 other women near Gilgo Beach. Now, most of the first episode goes over the investigation into the murders of what they call the Gilgo Four: Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amberlynn Costello, along with Gilbert, and of course they are all sex workers. If you listen to our Long Island serial killer episode from a few years back, we cover the case, I think, pretty well. Now, interviews with the Suffolk County and Nassau County police officials, as well as some reporters from the New York Post and a lot of the local TV and news stations that covered the case, reveals that the investigation got pretty far in the first year after the Gilgo Four's remains were found. But there were some circumstances that led the investigation to a dead end that lasted almost a decade. Now, some of that comes from the newly elected sheriff. Like, after they, start to crack this case, they've got a lot of evidence. They seem like they're on a road to solving it. A new sheriff is elected, and it turns out this guy, and we talked about this on our old episode, very corrupt guy.
Yeah, he was not good.
Partying. He's having group sex workers, orgies. At some point, he gets caught and has like a bag of goodies, some dildos and whips and things.
He was more interested in self-fulfilling himself than he was seemingly in investigating and cracking this case.
Right. It seems like he really shut the investigation down. And a lot of people have wondered if it's because he was actively pursuing sex workers and maybe had a circle of friends that were, and he might have been afraid that he knew or was involved with someone who may be killing these women.
Yeah, and then anytime you are newly elected and you kind of bring all your, which I'm sure it's typical to a certain degree, to bring in your kind of own team, new hires, but to almost direct them to not cooperate or communicate with the previous team or task force is insanity in my book. It doesn't make any sense. How are you not going to value these people who have been on this case for a very long time?
Yeah, well, it took up until 2003, almost a decade, until officials arrested Rex Heurrmann for the killings. So he is the alleged Gilgo Beach Killer, Long Island serial killer. He's got a couple different monikers. Now, the real gist of this series comes at the end of the first episode when we first hear from Heurrmann's wife, Asa Ellerup, as she sits down for an interview. We also hear from their daughter, Victoria. And this is the first time they've openly spoken to the media.
Right.
Now, the idea that Heurrmann, an architect that commuted from Massapequa Park in Nassau County to Midtown Manhattan every day, might have invited sex workers into his house and then killed them, seemed to be kind of incompatible with this idea that he lived with his family and they had no idea of what was going on.
Right.
They are both interviewed. His family, his wife and daughter, and even his stepson are interviewed in episodes 2 and 3. So we get more of their side of things. And they're just there's no way he could do this. He's a family man. He's very involved in our lives. His daughter's he's an amazing dad. He's always been here for me. They just could not believe the possibility that he was a serial killer.
And honestly, I understand that sentiment because, for one, you're not going to want to admit it to yourselves that your family member who you're close with is capable of this. But, as the evidence kind of presents itself and comes out, I think you have to try to take a step back and take a non-emotional look at the evidence.
Yeah, I mean, they're able to, the police, the law enforcement investigating, are able to track down burner phones and are able to kind of connect those with Heurrmann. Certain calls were made to victims in Massapequa Park, and then certain calls were made in Midtown, and it was at the times he would have been home or he would have been at work.
Right, and he would be going back and forth because he commutes to the city daily for work.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting how they're able to take those cell phones and kind of establish a pattern and the locations.
Well, a lot of people,
even with the burner phones.
Well, yeah, a lot of people think burner phone that it has this veil of anonymity, but there's multiple ways they can figure out who actually purchased the burner phone. They'll go back to video evidence at sometimes the retailers and see who's actually in line buying that phone, and things like that, or triangulation, with the towers and such. So they're not quite as anonymous as people think they are. Or if you use your credit card to buy. I mean, there's many ways.
Some of the other information that comes forward in this series is Rex's seemingly maybe unhealthy attachment or something to his mother. He buys his childhood home, and that's where his family lives and resides. And though he's an architect, he makes no upgrades or cosmetic changes to this house. And to be honest, I mean, not to insult someone's home, but it kind of looks like a dump a little bit. I mean, it's trashed around. It's not really landscaped.
No, it's in a pretty nice neighborhood, but it's kind of the one house that sticks out,
Yeah, I mean, it's a very nice neighborhood, well-maintained, manicured lawns. You can tell people in this neighborhood are really, proud of their homes. The whole neighborhood sort of maintains this certain level of appearance, I guess you could say. And then stuck in the middle of these, beautiful colonial homes is this sort of little ranch house that looks like it's fallen apart. It looks like it needs a new roof. The grass needs to be mowed. There's junk on the porch. There's junk in the backyard. It's just not. It just looks sort of dumpy compared to the rest of the neighborhood.
Yeah, which I found kind of strange. You being an architect, I guess maybe I'm making assumptions about architects, but seems like you would be, I don't know, maybe change the home or upkeep it at the very least.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can tell there's been absolutely nothing done. And, folks who knew the family discussed how he refused to make any changes to the home. He wanted to maintain it exactly as it was when he grew up there.
Okay.
So it's very dated. And on top of that, inside, it's a very cluttered household. There's a lot of stuff everywhere, which, I mean, if that's the way you choose to live your life, okay. That really gives me a lot of anxiety to be among that kind of clutter. They're kind of having to, maybe turn sideways to like walk down the hallways and.
Well, lived in and that kind of, once it gets to a certain level of clutter, I think it's, two different ball games.
So you can kind of tell like they're not maybe a family that's really concerned with cleanliness, keeping the house in order. There's a lot of stuff everywhere. But you do find out that Rex has built almost like an underground bunker in the basement. It has a steel door, like a, steel kind of reinforced door that like no one can get into. It's almost like a giant vault.
Yeah, didn't one neighbor say he saw like multiple men trying to wrestle this piece into the house, and he's like, "What?
Huge,
what is that?"
Yeah. So he's got like this kind of vault/bunker thing in the house where he has over 300 guns. He is a gun enthusiast.
Okay.
There is some suggestion from investigators that perhaps he used this space to murder the victims.
Right, because it would almost naturally be soundproof.
Yeah, it's soundproof. That's another thing about the room.
With this large door.
And his family was not allowed in there. No one was allowed in there. And the only person really that was allowed to see it is that he invited his friend David Jimenez to come see it, like once he had kind of completed it, and to show him all the guns. But there again, he wasn't really like invited in to hang out in this room.
Hey, you want to come see my dungeon?
It was a pretty private space.
It's his gun dungeon.
It's something. Dungeon/kill room / where he jerks off on his ammo. I don't know. He's doing the thing. Another interesting thing that I found in the documentary is how he refused to do any upgrades to the house. But once his wife was on a vacation away with the children, which also seems to coincide with these women going missing.
Yeah, every time the family happened to be out of town for whatever reason.
That is when a sex worker, one of these women, goes missing.
Yeah, which
he's never seen again.
I couldn't understand. The wife kind of mentioned that as like that's part of their evidence. And it's like to her it didn't prove anything. But I would be, if I did have a loved one, I'm like, hey, they couldn't have done this. But then they're like, hey, look at this. Every time you happen to be away, we think is the window when this poor victim went missing, then you obviously wouldn't know anything about it, but that's kind of weird that lines up, right? That would give me pause and make me think.
Well, what is very strange, again, is while the family is away on this one particular vacation, one of the victims that's around the time she goes missing, and I can't remember exactly which one it was, Rex decides to redo the entire bathroom.
Okay.
Like takes out the tub, the tile, like just completely redoes the bathroom. And so his wife's thinking this is like a great surprise. Like he's really, done this awesome thing for her. But law enforcement speculates it's because it was a crime scene.
And he wanted to make sure and get rid of evidence.
Yes.
Okay, well, it could be.
Yeah, well, his wife, up until the end, she does not believe he's guilty. She does not buy into it at all. Now,
let's circle back to the one thing they did that we both felt like they could have done early on and just been kind of investigating 101.
Well, when looking into the case of Amber Costello, she had 2 male roommates, and one of them, his name was Dave Schaller. And Dave Schaller and Amber had some kind of, I guess they had the scheme going on where she would connect with men on the internet, potential clients, invite them over to the house, to her home that she shared with these 2 other men. She would, be kind of in the throes of like, hey, yeah, we're going to get it on, whatever they were going to do.
I need you to pay me up front.
And then this guy, Dave, her roommate, would bust in pretending to be her boyfriend and either threaten the guy or whatever. And most of the Johns would just like try as quickly as they could to get out of the house.
Well, yeah, because as from a John's perspective, I'm just going to play devil's advocate. You don't want any trouble. You certainly don't want police.
Well, yeah, because a lot of these guys are married.
Yeah, you don't want
they don't want people to know what they've done.
Yeah, you don't want a scene, and certainly you don't want to be fighting some girl's boyfriend. I mean, there's so many reasons.
You're in their home,
yeah.
So you're kind of like trespassing a little bit. I mean,
so there's so many reasons for you to just kind of gather your things and scurry out of there and never ask any questions. And you're obviously not going to go to police.
You're going to grab your pants and leave.
Yeah. So it's a pretty, I guess from that viewpoint, it's a pretty good scheme on their part. And they've done this to, numerous guys.
So according to Dave, around the time that Amber had gone missing, they had pulled this trick on a guy that he described as Shrek. He said this guy was a big
ogre
of a man and kind of had like an ogreish face, and he describes him. This kind of went down. The man left in a green Chevy Avalanche.
Yes.
It's just Chevy, right?
This was the first generation Chevy Avalanche.
Yeah.
Which was a very... if people remember, a very
specific looking truck.
Yes, very distinct vehicle, and honestly, not many people had one, right?
Right, and so it's like this dark hunter green color. Well, afterwards, Amber had exchanged, I guess, more text messages with this John.
Yeah, he reached out and said that wasn't very nice.
Yes, that's exactly what he said. And so she agrees to meet him and go off with him because she feels kind of guilty. He kind of guilts her into feeling like she needs to make amends or like go out with him because the date was, ruined or whatever. Gets in the truck with this fella again and drives off. And that's the last time she's ever seen.
Yeah.
So her roommate describes to police this vehicle, tells them all the details about it, that it has this New York tag, just everything that they could possibly need to know about this vehicle. And my first thought was, and I said to you, why don't they just run like a search of the vehicle? Because that's a very specific vehicle. And if they already have these kind of burner phone, like they know she's communicating with somebody who's got like a burner phone, and they're already starting to kind of trace this burner phone around, and they think the killer might live in this Massapequa Park area. So it's like, well, why don't they just run the vehicle? There probably are not that many registered in the state of New York and probably not that many out on Long Island, right?
Yeah, you just run the make and model.
Not the most popular vehicle.
The area from where you suspect it might be from.
It's not like you're looking for a white Toyota Camry or something,
Yeah, and you're not going to get thousands of hits. You're going to get maybe hundreds and probably less than 100.
Probably not even that. But they don't run this vehicle. It takes them years to run the vehicle. And when they finally do, like nearly 10 years later, wow, guess who pops up?
It takes them directly to the
Rex
alleged killer.
Heurrmann, Massapequa Park, the only green Avalanche registered in this entire area, and it belongs to the suspected killer okay. I'm like, bro, if you had just done this from the beginning, you could have solved this way earlier.
And you maybe could have saved other people's lives.
I'm sorry, but to me that was like the most lazy police work. I'm not even like a detective. I'm not in law enforcement. But I'm like, I feel like I would have done a better job investigating this case than they did.
Well, that's
the most basic thing you could do.
That's not some amazing feat, when you get these cold case. Well, a lot of times these cold case investigators find the information 9 times out of 10 that's already in the file, a thread, and they pull it, and a lot of times it'll lead somewhere. But this isn't one of those obscure, barely mentioned. This is a description of make and model of a vehicle and description of the person that was last seen with her, that she rode away with and was never seen again. How in the world is not the number one only thing that you're following up? It seems like it's almost criminal when they drop the ball.
Yeah, I totally facepalmed. Like, what are they doing? And again, I understand like you're under a lot of pressure and whatever, but this is just, to me, police like investigating 101. But, a lot of people point to the fact that Dave Schaller had a history of drug addiction, that he was a criminal. I mean, he's helping her like roll these Johns and steal their money. So maybe he's not the most reliable witness. And other people online, which, internet users have claimed that he's changed his story kind of multiple times over the years. And I don't know how true that is. But I do know that when all of this happened, he did, cooperate with the police and tell them like, hey, we had this kind of scam and
I think him kind of owning up to the scam or scheme they were doing to people actually adds credibility to your statement, in my opinion. You're admitting that you're doing something that's wrong and illegal, and it seems like you're just laying everything out there because you're worried that, your roommate's gone and never to be seen again.
Yeah, but, I guess, like I mentioned, I think a lot of people pointed to that as maybe, like, police didn't find him to be the most credible person.
Well, again,
credible witness.
You didn't have to bet the farm on it. Just you could have spent half a day.
Well, I know. You could have just at least run the car information. I mean, to me, that's my biggest takeaway from this is like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
I really struggled with that part of the documentary. Now, as we mentioned before, there's interviews with his family. Victoria describes her father as being completely present 90% of the time. She recalls no violence. Even as prosecutors allege that he used the moments when the family was away to carry out these murders. Now, some critics have criticized like the structure of this documentary because they feel like the storytelling prioritizes this sort of dramatic reveal over the actual investigation.
Or the timeline of the investigation, if you will.
Yeah, but I mean, the intimate access that we get to the Heurrmann's home and conversations with his family, I think it does add this very, potent emotional layer to the story. Just being in this man's house, seeing family photos on the table where he's, holding his daughter on his lap and it's in front of a Christmas tree, or, tickling his daughter and she's laughing, or, at a birthday party. I mean, he does seem like a fully engaged father.
Well, I mean, I guess you can be both, right?
So to see that and to see like, this is the couch where this man sat, here's where he ate his meals, like this is his family. I mean, they seem just kind of as normal as the rest of us, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to kind of see that, I mean, it really does, I don't know, it really does, I guess, create a vision in your head of Jekyll and Hyde. Like this man can be a complete monster, but can also be like this great husband and father.
But we know it's possible. I mean, you have the BTK killer and, Gacy, for the most part, was seen as a pillar of the community and respectable by all friends and family. So, Ted Bundy. I mean, they have that mask. They're very good at pulling that mask down when they want to.
Now, can I just say something? And, maybe I shouldn't be like disparaging his wife, Asa, but she seems really dumb to me.
Yeah. But
I don't find her to be the most, she's not the brightest person in the world.
Well, no, and I mean, there might be a more articulate way of a person saying that, but I know what you mean.
She's a dumb bitch. That is how I'm going to articulate. I think she's dumb, and I think he married her because she's dumb and she's easy to manipulate.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you take someone like that who doesn't have maybe the best critical thinking skills or the biggest opinion, things like that, and they get steamrolled by these narcissistic monsters that they live with, and they take everything they say at face value, and that's how their relationship's always been, so they're never going to question.
Because all I could think of when she's introduced and as she kind of goes on in the docuseries with her point of view and answering questions, all I could think of is that scene from Coming to America where Eddie Murphy meets his arranged bride, and she's like, whatever you like, anything you like, whatever you like. That's what this woman reminds me of.
Right.
Like she doesn't seem to have any opinions or anything outside of what her husband's told her to believe. I don't know.
I keep picturing the they out here raping everybody guy saying, "You're so dumb."
Yeah, well, there's that. I'm telling you, bro, there's something not right about the wife.
Yeah, what can you do?
shake her, smack her through the face.
It's not going to work.
You're wrong.
She's like, my husband didn't do it.
You're a dumb bitch. Well, near the series end, Victoria concedes that after examining the evidence presented, she now believes her father is most likely the Gilgo Beach Killer. So we do see this daughter kind of go from being like, I don't think he's did it, or, I don't think he's a killer, to like, okay, he probably is. Because the evidence, it's piled up and there's plenty of it.
Right.
But in contrast, her mother, or the wife, the dumb bitch, Asa Ellerup, remains just resolute that he is not capable of doing this kind of thing. That her husband absolutely could not murder someone. And she kind of superimposes this whole like family loyalty and being such a loyal husband and father kind of into this crime narrative. Like, there's just no way because he did XYZ.
Some people can never come to grips with the reality, honestly.
Now, one thing that is pretty interesting is Carrie Rawson, daughter of the BTK killer, Dennis Rader, that you mentioned just a few minutes ago, Dylan. She does appear in the docuseries, offering some empathy for the family, but also warnings. She's kind of able to draw parallels between her own family's grief and how the Heurrmanns must be feeling. And she also questions whether denial is clouding Asa's judgment.
Right.
Now, as I mentioned before, Heurrmann's longtime friend David Jimenez, who's considered Rex like his best friend. He provides some insight into his character. He describes his friend as being methodical, meticulous, that he has this kind of extreme calm self-control that he's never really seen in another person. And that was kind of one thing I guess he admired about his friend, was just how he seemed so calm and in control at all times. But he also now looks back and believes, okay, well, those are traits that probably aided him in, not being caught or protecting him.
Yeah.
For so many years.
Definitely.
Because they're not even sure like how far back he's been killing women. There were a couple of other cases that have not been directly linked to him, but that now police are kind of investigating that he may have had something to do with these other cases.
Well, I think there's a high likelihood of that when you have someone kind of hiding in plain sight like this, and until this evidence was compiled, no one would ever suspect him of doing this crazy thing. And he's the type of guy that could stand there and have a conversation with neighbors or friends about, oh my God, can you believe, there's some monster out there doing, possibly doing this to girls in our neighborhood or our area, and carry on with them, and people would never suspect.
That was the other thing the neighbors that were interviewed stated about the family, is that they really seemed to take, kind of keep to themselves.
Right.
They were not exactly like super friendly with the neighbors or interacted with the neighbors very much.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me.
That they were kind of a very insular family. Overall, I think this documentary is worth a watch. And the thing I like about it that kind of gives it, I guess, a more distinct element is the fact that you do get this like up close and personal, very intimate view of the home and of his family and how they live their life, and pictures and home movies and that kind of thing. Where other films like, I think, Gone Girls, that's on Netflix, focuses more on like the victims,
right,
and their families' fight for justice.
So, if you had 3 thumbs, would you give it 3 thumbs up?
I'd probably give it like a 2.5.
Oh, 2.5 thumbs up.
Yeah, I think it's worth a watch.
Okay.
For our listeners who might be interested in learning more about that case, because it is a pretty fascinating case.
No, it really is. When you look at the whole picture of the case, all this time later, and to finally, usually when things carry on this long, there is no resolution in the end. So I think that's what makes it very interesting.
Now, Dylan, are you ready to get into recapping some true crime news, some crime news up and down the East Coast?
Let's do it.
Our breaking story, Dylan. A man was arrested after he allegedly broke the window of a Del Taco in Florida because he was denied service, according to the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. That seems like an extreme reaction.
We love to talk about these fast food crimes because they crazy. It was around midnight Sunday when the suspect, Anthony Izzo, H to the Izzo, Anthony Izzo, pulled into the drive-thru in Port Charlotte, a city about 30 miles northwest of Fort Myers. Employees told Izzo they were closed and couldn't take his order because they'd already shut the kitchen down and put the meat away, according to authorities. Moments later, employees heard loud popping noises, and one worker called 911. She told the operator she heard popping noises that sounded like gunshots near the drive-thru window. And according to the sheriff's office, Izzo had driven up to the window and tried to break it with a pipe wrench in his car.
Okay, I'll show you.
He allegedly hit this window like 4 times, even cracking it, and then drove away.
So, I mean, does he think they're going to be like, oh, the guy's breaking the window, we should get the meat back out?
Let's make this man a taco.
Open the kitchen. This guy's obviously very hungry.
Izzo was eventually tracked down to his home on Birchcrest Road, where he was arrested for criminal mischief. He caused approximately $2,000 worth of damage to this drive-thru window. Man, I'm telling you, Dylan, it seems like as of late, we've discussed multiple fast food incidents.
Yeah, including murder.
Yes. What is wrong with people?
I don't know. I don't get it.
I mean, I feel like I ask myself that question more than any other every day. Every second of the day, I feel like I'm asking myself, what is wrong with people? Everybody's wilding out.
The people freaking out in public, you know, a lot of times you see it in fast food or restaurants or retail or something. It just seems like it happens way more. And I know people say, oh, we're just more connected now. You hear about it more. But I'm pretty sure it didn't happen at this level when we were growing up as kids.
Yeah, I don't really remember people showing out and showing their asses in public. It was very looked down upon. And most of the time, if you did see something like this, a customer going off on an employee or anything like that, which again was very rare, people would step in.
Yeah, people would tell them to stop, or leave that person alone.
You need to leave. Yeah.
And yes.
Like people took a stand against those folks and kind of like helped out the employee that was getting, you know,
nowadays,
raged upon.
Everybody just stands around and records, and it's almost like you see it like people are afraid to say anything.
Well, I think they are afraid to say something because nowadays you don't know who you're dealing with.
You don't, and if you do intervene and it escalates and something happens, as we've seen many examples of that, you could end up, you know, in jail facing serious charges when that was never your intent in the first place.
Now, Dylan, let's move along here. We have discussed the Karen Reed trial. She's had how many trials?
I want to say this is the third trial.
I think this has been the third trial. Well, Dylan, she was acquitted, found not guilty of murder in the retrial in relation to her boyfriend's death.
Yeah, I believe the most serious charge she was found not guilty of was second-degree murder.
Yep.
And now they did find her guilty of basically a DUI.
Yeah, operating under the influence. She was sentenced to 1 year of probation for that.
Right. And so this is a pretty big deal. And a lot of people have been watching this third trial closely because, you know, there was some new evidence. There was the temperature of her husband. Was it her husband?
Boyfriend.
Her boyfriend's cell phone that always never got warm again. You know, started getting cold and stayed cold. The prosecutors thought that was pretty good new evidence that would prove that he never went inside the home that he was in front of. And, what do you think about this case? Because I think that the defense did a decent job at kind of poking holes, which is their job.
Yep.
I think they did a decent job of poking holes in the prosecutor's kind of biggest pieces of evidence.
Well, I mean, I wasn't there, obviously, at the trial, so I don't know all the details. But from what I've been gathering through, you know, news articles and whatever, a lot of the jurors have come forward now that the trial is complete and say, you know, in the beginning I thought she was guilty, but then my opinion changed when I heard more facts.
Right.
And there are jurors who were like, no, I think she's absolutely innocent. Like, I don't think she killed her boyfriend. So I guess hearing from these jurors that, and some of them have no doubt in their mind that she's innocent. I mean, to me, that's like, okay, I think that's telling.
Right. Yeah, I think so.
That maybe the prosecution's case was very weak, or that her attorneys did an amazing job of poking holes, like you said.
Yeah, and they had her saying things the next day, like to witnesses, or did I hit him? Did I do something, or things of statements of that nature. But unfortunately, when you're very intoxicated, that's a problem that happens, is you don't know exactly what happened, and I think that made this case, it clouded this case in a way to where someone couldn't give a factual, straightforward statement of events, because she was, there's no denying that she was very, very intoxicated that evening.
Well, John O'Keefe's family, certain members have called this a heartbreaking verdict. They express anger towards the outside influences that may have resulted in this not guilty verdict, and believes it's a pretty cut and dry case. Right?
Yeah.
And also, some people who knew O'Keefe said in a statement that they thought this was a devastating miscarriage of justice. Reed's defense lawyers had identified some who had signed a statement as possible suspects who were not properly investigated in O'Keefe's death.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. All you got to do is raise reasonable doubt. The burden of proof is on the prosecution, is on the state.
Well, the jurors reached a unanimous decision in the case. The trial featured dozens of witnesses, included a series of experts who at times offered highly technical testimony. Those specialists aimed to fill in the evidentiary record. I'll get that out. That included no eyewitness accounts or video of the events that left John O'Keefe mortally wounded outside this suburban home of a now retired Boston police sergeant during blizzard conditions on January 29th of 2002. Now, O'Keefe died of blunt force trauma to the head, according to the medical examiner, and hypothermia was listed as a contributing factor.
Damn, that's what's kind of lost in all this, is I do really wonder exactly what happened. And I don't remember them saying if he was, rather intoxicated or not, the toxicology report on his autopsy. But it just does leave you wondering what happened, what really happened that evening.
Yes, it does. And I do find some of the information surrounding the homeowner and maybe some of the guests to be a little strange.
Yeah, I always thought I don't know that they did anything to the boyfriend directly, but they always had this air of they know something. They're not being completely honest with investigators. So I just could never put my finger on what that was.
I guess one of the most notable details about the proceedings was the absence of former Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor. Proctor actually led the investigation into O'Keefe's death and was fired over revelations that emerged in the first trial that he shared investigative details with non-law enforcement personnel, and that he made these highly derogatory remarks about Reed.
Yes, he did.
So the defense attorneys argued that he led a biased and corrupt investigation and alleged that this was an allegation that Proctor denied in the first trial. And although he was listed as a possible witness for both the prosecution and the defense, neither called him to testify. Now, the defense attorney said that should stop you in your tracks. Wouldn't you want to hear from the lead investigator?
Well, yes, but then that's obviously going to open him up to a cross from the defense.
Exactly, and the defense points to the fact that the Commonwealth stayed away from him. So the prosecutors didn't want to call him to the stand.
Well, no, because that's going to reintroduce at the very least, incompetency of his investigation. It's going to reintroduce that to the third jury, which I could understand as a prosecutor wanting to keep that whole can of worms out of it. But yeah, he just it was more than just like, it seemed like he had animosity towards her. If you look over the statements he was said to have made about Karen Reed to others and things like that, and it seemed misplaced. Like, if you're an investigator and you don't have a dog in this fight, then why are you being so kind of personal?
Well, a lot of people point to the I guess kind of age-old adage that these law enforcement officers like cover for their own kind of thing, and that maybe he was highly invested and opinionated in this case from the beginning because of John O'Keefe's law enforcement status, and that he felt like there's this brotherhood and that he needs to, like, I guess serve justice for this man.
Right.
And sort of like hyper focused on Karen Reed without looking at any of the other angles.
Well, and also
we see that happens a lot in cases where law enforcement will laser focus on a suspect.
And the homeowner whose house it happened in front of, at the very least, was also former law enforcement. And one thing I did think was the defense alleged that her pieces of tail light that were found at the scene could have been planted. I think that was a big part of their defense, and they laid out why they thought that. And but when you have this big scene, and this is what kind of weirded me out about it. You had this big scene in front of your house, right? Now it's turned into a crime scene, basically. You never, ever come out, even if I wasn't former law enforcement, I'm probably going to come out and say, what
is going on?
What in the world's going on here?
Well, I am, because I'm nosy.
Yeah.
I want to know what's going on in my yard, in my neighbor's yard. I want to know what's going on down the street. Anytime I see law enforcement or an ambulance, I'm like, what's going on? I mean.
And nobody.
I'll admit, I'm nosy as fuck.
And nobody from that house came out in any capacity and asked any questions, or at the very least, hey, what's happening? I don't know. I found that kind of strange.
Oh, I think it's more than strange. It's suspicious, in my opinion.
Well,
because who wouldn't come out and see what's happening?
Especially if you have the mindset
of a law enforcement.
Of a former investigator in law enforcement.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. All right, Dylan, let's move along here. Let's talk a little bit about the Bryan Kohberger trial. A woman is expected to testify about delivering an order to one of the Slain University of Ohio students shortly before the quadruple homicide back in 2022. The Idaho, I almost called it the Ohioan.
The Odaha?
Yeah. The Idaho Statesman, I guess that's a newspaper, reported that the 44-year-old DoorDash driver, who has not been publicly identified, told police that she had delivered food to the home minutes before this deadly attack occurred. A probable cause affidavit stated that Xana Kernodle ordered from a local Jack in the Box. It arrived at 3:59 a.m., just minutes before the slayings began.
Oh my God, how scary is that?
Well, it's pretty scary that she's eating a Jack in a Box.
Well, no, I'm just saying it's scary that you drop some food off at a place where the killer is already likely there.
No, it's very strange. The woman talked to Pullman police last year. That's Pullman, Washington police. After she was pulled over during a traffic stop, she was filmed saying that she had taken a prescription painkiller and that she was really stressed due to a murder case. That's when she revealed that she may have been a witness and might need to testify at this trial. She said, "I'm the DoorDash driver. I saw Bryan. I parked right next to him."
Oh, wow. She saw him directly.
Yeah.
Wow, that's scary. Even more scary.
Now, on Wednesday, Kohberger's lawyers sought to delay his trial again, claiming that a Dateline episode about the case provided evidence was being leaked to the public. Now, this Dateline episode aired in May, and it reportedly showed a car circling the same block as the off-campus home during the early hours of November 13th of 2022. The same car was reportedly seen approaching the residence and speeding away 13 minutes later.
Okay, can Dateline calm down with this case, please? I mean, seriously, what are you doing?
I haven't listened to Dateline in a hot minute, but you do.
I do.
And you've said they have covered this case quite a bit.
They just recently, I mean, it's this very episode. I skipped it because, I'm like, come on, find something else to talk about. But, yeah, they beat the shit out of any popular case. But then they wanted to step back and act like they're the most virtuous of all true crime shows, and that it's other true crime shows that get it wrong or this and that. And how many times have we listened to a Dateline episode and then have you go and do the case and you find out all kinds of facts?
Oh, they leave out so much.
That they leave out, and they really allow things, and I think it's to entice people to cooperate with them or something. But they leave out so much. Oh,
they paint cases in a certain light for sure.
They always do, and they act like it's only, I've heard some of the hosts actually say this verbatim, that, people tell me I'm glad I contacted Dateline, but these other true crime podcasts are like, adding things or taking things away or blah this and that. I'm like, whatever. And they will take a case and beat it to death, and they have such a big platform, they can actually affect the outcome of the trial. So, I mean, you need to calm down. That's not cool if you're going to help somebody like Bryan Kohberger get out of jail because you're, getting ahead of the trial like this.
Hey, Dylan, all they're concerned about are ratings.
I mean, I get that, I guess.
We at Mountain Murders are not concerned with ratings.
We're the little podcast that could, and we know that we're probably not, unless some of the jurors are super cool and listen to Mountain Murders. We're probably not going to affect the outcome of anything.
Dylan, can I tell you? Well, I've told you. Can I tell the listeners a story of meeting a listener?
Yes, you can.
All right. Well, first I should give a shout out to, we'll call her Doc. What's up, Doc? Jordan. She is an amazing person. Now, I am in stirrups at the doctor's office having my annual exam, if you will. I think the ladies know exactly what I'm talking about.
So you were mounted.
Some of the men probably wish they didn't know what I was talking about.
Or you had mounted the apparatus.
Well, not on purpose.
I want to get the picture set for everybody.
Intentionally, I don't ever want to mount this apparatus as you speak. But anyway, so there I am in my most vulnerable and awkward position, which I have such anxiety and, this whole thing stresses me out when I have to go to this. And in the middle of it, my amazing doctor says, "Can I ask you something that's not related to this?" I said yes. And that's when she asked, "Are you the Heather from Mountain Murders?"
Nice.
She's like, "I saw your chart and your name, and I thought there can't be many Heather Packers out there."
Right.
It's a unique name. So I just had to ask. And I said, "Well, yeah, that's me." And she's like, "I love your podcast. I'm a big fan." She said she started in the beginning and she's working her way through our catalog. Thank you for the folks who do that. People who kind of bear with us even maybe when we weren't so polished. Not that we are now. But yeah, it was nice to meet her. Not only did she meet me, but she got to know me really well.
She knows things about you that
she knows things about me that maybe only you know.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah. I guess that was a nice surprise.
Well, I want to give a big shout out to Jordan. Thanks for making sure my wife's in good shape.
Dylan's going to come by. He wants you to give him an exam.
No, that's fine.
He wants you to know all about him as well.
I'll do the reverse stirrups.
What does that even mean?
I don't even know, but we'll find out together.
Now, it was such a moment. I had to share it with listeners.
No, it's pretty awesome.
Because we're in we've moved, we're in another state. Like how small of a world, or just coincidental that you meet someone.
And it's happened
who listens to the pod.
It's happened a few times to us at some music festivals and things like that.
Yeah.
Been like,
wait a minute, are you Mountain Murray? Yeah.
And it's cool when it happens. Maybe in this specific scenario.
No, we love it.
Yeah.
So if you're bagging my groceries or you have your hand in my mouth because you're my dentist or something, yeah, feel free to always let me know.
All righty.
That you're a listener. So Kohberger's trial is set to begin on August 11th, but his lawyers are claiming that they need more time to prepare. And I'm like, bro, you've had 3 years.
I mean, come on.
Come
What are we waiting on?
I don't know.
And I mean, can he just defend himself? He's so smart.
I'm just ready for this to go before a judge, to go before a jury, and that be it. I do feel like this case, and I mean, we're guilty of it too, but it's just kind of, it's one of those that's just like being beaten to death.
You can't be more ready than the judge who was presiding over the latest Lori Vallow case to be done with it.
Oh, yeah?
That judge was so over her. It was pretty funny.
Now, another bit of crime news that has popped up this week, and this will be our last case to discuss, Dylan, is that Barry Morphew, let's say that again, Morphew, was charged this week for a second time in the death of his wife, Suzanne, 5 years after she vanished from their home in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and more than 3 years after the original criminal case against him collapsed.
Damn.
Now, a grand jury indicted the 57-year-old on one count of first-degree murder in the death of Suzanne Morphew, 49. Suzanne's disappearance, her husband's arrest, and the protracted court saga that continued even after the original case was dismissed have continued to spark interest across the world. I mean, there have been tons of documentaries, podcasts, news stories about this case. It's really captured the attention, I think, of a lot of us.
I don't remember this one.
I do.
You do?
Yeah. It's captured a lot of our attentions, including mine. Now, Barry Morphew was arrested in Arizona on Friday, 2 days after the grand jury voted on the 10-page indictment, and he's currently being held on a $3 million cash-only bail.
Damn.
Big money.
He's not going to get out.
For $3 million, what? You'd have to have someone put up.
Cash only?
Yeah.
$3 million.
$3 million.
Yeah.
So no, like 300,000.
No, it's not 10%. No,
this is it.
It's a full cash bail. No bondsmans, nothing like that. Someone has to come and put up $3 million.
He needs to hope he's got a rich uncle or something out there, right?
It's not going to happen.
Prosecutors are going to seek to extradite him to the San Luis Valley. If convicted, he faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, Dylan, I'll recap you here on what happened. Suzanne Morphew disappeared from the family's home on May 10th of 2020, and then her body was not discovered until September of 2023 when state officials came across it while investigating an unrelated case near Moffat. Authorities determined she died with a mix of animal tranquilizers in her body.
Oh my gosh.
Barry was initially charged with his wife's murder in 2021 before her body was found, and all of the charges were dropped in 2022 after prosecutors mishandled the case and were sanctioned for discovery violations. So after that happened, they've worked really hard to kind of move this case forward. Barry has maintained his innocence since his wife went missing. He tried to sue police and prosecutors for $15 million over his original arrest and prosecution, but a judge dismissed that lawsuit.
Man, if he had won that, he would have money to get himself out of bail right now, or out of home bond.
Now, in the case against him, prosecutors argued that Barry killed his wife on May 9th, 2020, after discovering her nearly 2-year-long extramarital affair, and then he disposed of her body and staged it to look like a bicycle crash after he left for work. Before he left for work on that day. He maintained that Suzanne was sleeping in the bed when he left. The 2 daughters of the couple happened to be out of town at the time. The last time investigators can prove Suzanne Morphew was alive was just after 2 p.m. on May 9th when she sent a selfie to her paramour, her lover.
Oh my gosh.
Her lover from the couple's home. Barry put his phone into airplane mode at 2:47 p.m. that day. And after that, Suzanne never responded to messages from her lover that were sent around 2:44 and 2:46. So while Barry initially told police that he had a happy marriage, Suzanne had told a friend before she died that she didn't feel safe being alone with her husband and described a 2018 incident in which he pushed her into a closet and put a gun to his own head, asking, "Is this what you want?"
Oh my gosh. That sounds very emotionally abusive and physically.
She had confided in this friend that she was contemplating a divorce and that Barry was, quote, begging for another chance. The indictment released Friday states that Barry Morphew deleted text messages with his wife, but saved a screenshot of one of her messages from May 6th of 2020 that said, quote, "I'm done. I could care less what you're up to and have been for years. We just need to figure this out civilly." After Suzanne disappeared, investigators found a tranquilizer dart gun, empty darts, and a dart package that included a capped needle typically used for injecting tranquilizers into the darts. They also found a cap used to cover such needles in the clothes dryer at the Morphew home.
I mean, is it that abnormal to have a tranquilizer dart gun? I mean, doesn't everybody?
Well, I do, in case I have to take down wild game.
Yeah, I mean, you never know when you're going to
be stampeded by elephants or
rhinoceros and,
trampled by a giraffe.
Yeah, I mean, there could be some kind of dinosaur hybrid or something. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Or when they bring back the saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah, I can't wait for that.
He escapes and terrorizes us.
They've already brought back the dire wolves. Wolves.
This new indictment details testimony from experts and law enforcement officials that no private citizens or business in that part of Colorado purchased the regulated prescription tranquilizers. It's a formula known as BAM or BAM that was found in Suzanne's remains in the 3 years before her disappearance.
No person who has a reason to no business.
Nobody had purchased any.
Nobody at all.
Because it's a pretty tightly controlled medication or, tranquilizer. So they would definitely have records, and that no one in this area had purchased it in the 3 years before she died.
Including him?
Well, wait. Her husband purchased multiple kits containing the drug in 2018. This was just a few months before the family moved from Indiana to Colorado.
Okay, look. He did it. I mean, come on. Is there any question?
So the records show, these prescription records show, that when Suzanne disappeared, only one private citizen living in the entire area of the state of Colorado had access to BAM, Barry Morphew.
Well, there you go.
So much of the first case kind of focused on Morphew's movements and actions the evening of May 9th and the morning of May 10th before his wife was reported missing. The driver and passenger doors on Morphew's truck were opened at 3:25 a.m. on May 10th. Barry's phone appeared to move to the area where his wife's abandoned bicycle was found. Although the data was inconclusive because of the poor cell coverage in the region, the last ping on Suzanne's cell phone was at 4:23 a.m. on May 10th of 2020 near the family's home.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like they have some new information in this case, and it will be something that we will kind of keep you updated on.
Yeah, we'll
as
certainly
it unfolds.
Keep our eye on that.
Because I've been fairly certain this man was guilty from the beginning.
Well, just that one piece of evidence with the tranquilizer dart kit and that very highly controlled substance. Yeah, I mean, come on.
Maybe we should get a tranquilizer dart kit.
Yeah, maybe it'll help you go to sleep at night.
Well, I was thinking just, we don't know what's happening in the world. And it might be a nice weapon to have.
Okay.
Just in case.
Yeah.
There are roving marauders trying to get in here and steal our bottled water or something.
Well, I mean, we don't have that big of a store, so I don't know how big of a target we are.
Well, you never know.
All right, Heather, thank you for those updates, and thank you for your Gilgo Beach wrap-up. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I would say folks definitely should check it out. It's worth a watch.
Yeah.
There is some interesting stuff kind of revealed that maybe you didn't know before.
All right, so we hope this podcast finds you
cool
and hydrated.
Cool as the motherfucking polar bear's toenails.
Remember those animals who may be, caught out in this. Make sure they're hydrated too. And check on...
You shouldn't have your dogs out in this.
Well, no, but,
It's hot.
check on your loved ones. Any elderly loved ones or people like that. Make sure they're okay. Yeah. Unless you hate them or something, then don't check on them.
Well, there's that.
And until next time, we'll be back with our regular episode of Mountain Murders. Heather's hard at work on it now.
I'll be over here thinking about my enemies wishing their air conditioner would break.
So our plan is to drop that on Monday, sometime Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So until next time.
I don't know, Dylan.
I don't know.
Stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated.
Put some sunscreen on.
Yeah, stay out of the sun.
Get your ass out the sun.
Get out the sun.
You don't need to be all up in that. It's hot.
It's true.
You can burn your little self up.
All right, I'm going to go wipe myself down with moist cloths.
Oh, gross. Okay, bye.
Bye.